Hi, good morning, Andy, and thank you for joining us. Thank you very much for taking the time out today to have a quick chat with us about your AV. Um, Before we start, it would be great if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, about when you came in the hospitality industry and how long you've been at Cameron House.
Morning, Chris, and thanks for speaking to me today. I've been at Cameron House for a little under 10 years now, but have been in the industry for 20. I started in the industry back in 2002 with Malmaison Hotels down in Birmingham in their graduate program, and spent a couple of years down there. And I was lucky enough to spend a number of years with them, growing up through the business. Took on my first general manager's job with Hotel de Van in Tunbridge Wells. And then up in Aberdeen with Malmaison for the opening of the new property up there for 3 years. And I finished my time with Malmaison Hotel de Van at One Devonshire Gardens in the Glasgow's West End for 18 months or so before I came to Cameron House to take up the role of originally operations director, then resort general manager, and then for the last 6 or 7 years, resort director.
Fantastic. And obviously, we noticed in 2020 you became a Master Inn holder, which is congratulations, quite a nice accolade for you.
Yes, it was something that had been suggested to me by my previous MD Stephen Carter, and having been to a couple of conferences prior to becoming a Master Inn holder, it was something I definitely wanted to get involved with and join. So, a great honour to be appointed a Master Inn holder, and actually down to London for part of that next week. Actually, for things that have still been delayed since COVID, we're just getting around to doing now. So, delighted to be part of the Master Inn holders.
Fantastic. Well, that's obviously an institution we as CGA sponsor, and we're very proud to be associated with. But obviously, you and I met with the refurbishment at Cameron House. We met a couple of years ago. But prior to the refurbishment, which we'll come on to in a minute, what was your experience with sort of AV systems and how they affected and complemented businesses?
Well, obviously, you don't need me to tell you that AV sort of as AV and digital technology has moved on and continues to move on significantly. But when I first got here, a lot of our AV, or over the last 3 or 4 years that I was here before the hotel closed and started the refurbishment, much of our AV was essentially outsourced. We had the typical screens and projectors and bits and pieces that we had in house that we used for events, but a large chunk of our requirements for meeting and event clients quite often had to be outsourced, just because we didn't have that level of technology in house. And again, probably back in 2017, Zoom and Teams and all those bits and pieces were around, but they certainly weren't as much of the daily business life that they have become now. So yeah, we had essentially quite limited AV, and it would have come to a head probably. Well, it would have come to a head had we not been closed and doing refurbishment. It'd have come to a head anyway. But we started, I suppose, in many ways with a blank canvas because of the refurbishment.
We've now worked together. You now have the result all open now with the functionality. So what is it you find now, operationally or sales wise, that the system now offers you that you couldn't do before? Obviously, you touched on the COVID and the video conferencing elements.
Yeah, from an operational point of view, it's great to have one system that goes right through, and even with my limited knowledge, I can walk into most of our rooms and get the lights on and get the AV started, which is saying something. It must be very user friendly if I can do that. And having a similar, an identical setup through all our big meeting spaces, and we've got our cinema at Cameron House as well, and having that familiarity of use and ease of use through the touchpad panels we've got, plus the ability for our AV manager to look at that remotely as well, is really fantastic for the team. The team does change, and we have team members moving around the business, so the more consistency we have with that, the better. We sort of did a root and branch review, and to many extent, we've got more AV than we probably would have done had we not been closed, and had we not been part of the big project. We wouldn't have put quite as much of what we've put in. But in my view, from a client's point of view, we have a large part of just what we didn't have before in there in terms of from the simple side to drop down projectors and drop down screens, to video cameras in 3 or 4 of the spaces that allows them to broadcast meetings to a wider Zoom or Teams or any type of audience that are offsite, is a great selling point.
Yep.
Not having to there's obviously the ability for us to charge for those facilities, but more importantly, it's not a case of we can get that in for you. We've got it in place. We can show it working, and it's great functionality to have, as well as the ease of some of the simpler things which we probably didn't have in terms of screen mirroring and projecting from a laptop straight up to a screen using some of the apps that we've got. So it's now that we're getting our heads around how it all works, it's very user friendly, it's very easy to explain, and it's very consistent in terms of its performance.
Fantastic. So obviously we're still doing the dotting the last I's and crossing the last T's with the system, and we hope to develop an ongoing relationship with you supporting. Is it beneficial to you, the fact that we can contact the site remotely and monitor the equipment and work with you in real time?
Yeah, hugely beneficial, because things do go wrong or user error or whatever it may be. So having that remote support and having that ability to be dialed in is absolutely crucial, and really one of a few, but one of the most important things for me, and one of the most important functionalities of the system is that we have that. We're not trying to talk you through. You can quite often see if there is an issue or what the challenge is, and it, much easier than having it explained by sometimes someone who's not as clued up in the system as perhaps you are.
Just taking a step, I'm just trying to, do you remember how you were introduced to CGA and why you might have chosen us over somebody else? I think it might have been MLR.
I think it was MLR. I can't be certain how the original introduction came, but you certainly came highly recommended. I do remember. I think actually, the more you say it, it was MLR. And I think from our early conversations, it was clear you knew your stuff. You had solutions that could fit different budgets and different requirements in that respect, and the project here at Cameron House, for lots of reasons, and for the fact it was 2 projects, both the reinstatement and then the extension, has been long and complex. But having the consistency of CGA right through from day one has been great, and not just the consistency in the company, but obviously in the individuals that we're dealing with has made it very easy, and been one less worry, because we've known the job will get done by hook or by crook. It will get done and be completed on time.
Hopefully not too much crook, but
no, not at all. None at all.
So is there anything, just now you've worked with, is there anything that differentiates CGA maybe from other contractors, not necessarily like their AV, but other AV if they're available? Is there anything that we do better that other people don't? I don't know.
I think you were able to explain, certainly 2 or 3 things. You were able to explain what is, for some, quite complex technology, and for those who don't understand it, you're able to explain the benefits and what it does and how it works, and the usability of that very easily. So we, I think it was pretty clear what we were buying. I think you didn't overpromise in terms of delivery schedules, and you were quite transparent and honest in terms of how that would happen and what needs to be done, and in what order, to make sure that we didn't have a system that was put in at a time that suited you, but then ultimately, if the project wasn't quite complete, it caused any damage or longer term issues. So that was very honest and transparent in terms of how that was rolled out, but also a desire to make sure whatever deadlines needed hit were managed as well as we could, so that and we know that you were on the back foot with our main contractor quite a few times, but you reacted very well to that and got us to where we needed to be in time, and ahead of any first events that we had with as usual with projects like this. They always overrun. They always go to the wire. But the AV and the CGA integration was not the last thing to complete, and it was completed and working and ready to go as soon as we were.
So just on that note, if another GM came to you and said, "I'm looking at refurbishment," is there anything you've learned from this project, maybe about looking, a little maybe more of the general project, things they ought to consider before they start, before they do their refurbishment piece, and any thinking or any learning you've made?
I think it's easy when you obviously got to consider the financial investment for it, but it wasn't certain from day one that we were going to put this integration into all our spaces. It was, is it going into the new spaces? Is it going into just the spaces that need that basically have nothing? And we had some basic provisions in other areas, but actually having one system right through the business now is certainly hugely advantageous. Of course, it's more expensive than doing certain areas, but in the long term, I think that will pay off in its consistency across all the event spaces and our and all the speakers and everything that's gone in. We're in the very fortunate position for that to be one system right across the business. As I said, it's not always as easy as that, because that comes with it more investment. But I think also just the planning and understanding what's needed and what functionality is needed is really key, because I think not in this case, but sometimes things can be over engineered, and you can have a spec of provision that can do 40 things when you only need to do 4. So I think making sure that you're trying to get working back from what you're trying to get at the end is really important, to sit down and say, oh, this is what we need. And how do we do that, rather than just taking something off the shelf and realizing that you've either overspec'd it or perhaps on the flip side of that, underspec'd it.
Just as you talk there, the dynamic came to me, because you've installed a lot of stuff. You touched on it earlier. You've installed maybe more than you thought you might have done. But some of that is the fact that you are a little way outside of Glasgow, which is the main centre for sort of AV companies and the like. And there's a cost to getting them out to site. So by installing some of it, you facilitate a certain number of basic events, and the clients who are always going to bring an event company will always bring an event company, but you've got that balance.
I think that's right. And since we opened, we've had 2 or 3 big events. Even just the new wing that we've opened, we've had 2 of the big events that an AV company have come out and done everything. But you can come and do a pretty high tech meeting for attendees just on site, and attendees, a mix of attendees on and off site, without needing anyone externally, and we can either, as an added benefit to selling and securing business, know that there's no on cost to us for that, but we've also got the opportunity to upsell that facility, because in many places you would be hiring in everything to or paying for everything for the provision of AV, etc. So but yes, not having to rely on a trip from Glasgow for a last minute projector or screens or whatever it may be. Of course, in terms of the resort, that's beneficial, and to many extents expected that you would have that on hand and ready to go.
I'm always conscious when we talk to hotels, there's that balance between what you need to own and what you want to own, and going back to what you're saying, overspecking the system and leaving it there, stood there dormant whilst all the event companies comes in, doesn't work for you as a business. You've made unnecessary investment, and it's always a balancing act to find out what you need to own and what we'd love to sell you.
Yeah, and I don't think I can think of too much just now that we've overspec'd, but we're also not having to make lots of phone calls to get extra stuff in. So that gives me the initial impression we've been pretty well balanced in what we've done in terms of what we need. And there might be opportunity as we go further forward to add more and do more. But I think it goes back to that original scoping exercise is understanding what you're wanting to be provided, and trying to get as close to that as possible when you actually get to the end of the project.
Obviously, you're near the end of the project now. I think that most of the builders are now sort of leaving the area and starting to look like a hotel rather than half a building site. Are you happy with the overall product at the end? Not just us, but the whole project that's come together.
Yeah, listen, it's been a long project. The contractors arrived on site in August 2018, so it's been 4 years, but actually close to 5 years since the hotel first closed. So it's been a long journey, but both the reinstatement and the addition of the 68 bedrooms and the new ballroom in the Lomond wing We're absolutely delighted with the product and the finished resort. As you say, we're a week or two away from seeing the back of contractors, and for anyone who's going through a project, they'll share that sense of joy that is approaching us as the contractors leave, and you can get back to doing the day-to-day business. So but we're delighted with the product, delighted with CGA played a big part in the obviously all the AV exercise, but also contributing to the cinema quite significantly to the cinema installation that we put in as well. So there's been great strides made. We've certainly caught up with current technology. We were probably well behind that before, and it's great to have a resort that's both in terms of its product and its offering is right up there. So we're looking forward to entering the last month or two of this year, and more importantly into next year, with everything finished and ready to get back to the day job of running a resort.
Fantastic. Well, I sort of covered what I wanted to cover. Unless you have anything to add about CGA, what CGA have done for you, thank you ever so much for your customer. I hope that this can be a longer term relationship. We do look forward to working with you and supporting Cameron House and evolving the system as the requirements grow in the future. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to us today.
No problem. Thanks very much indeed, Chris.
Okay, I look forward to catching you soon, Andy.
Thanks.